To me, again, tempo, if it does indeed play out that way where it's a slower paced game, I side with Auburn. And then with Walter Clayton Jr. actually gearing to the points props or to player props and scoring props for Clayton specifically, I haven't played it yet. And I'm assuming you're going to disagree with this one as well. But, and it, to preface, I bet against Mark Sears last year in the Final Four against UConn. He went over his points prop. It didn't necessarily matter that UConn had one of the best on-ball defenders because, as we know, you could talk about isolation defense all you want, but like you hit on with Florida's shot creation, you're going to get ball screens. Clayton's going to be able to free up from time to time where Denver Jones isn't in his face. However, shooting backdrop for both teams, I'm curious how that impacts Clayton. And we have seen Clayton struggle at least in one of the tournament games against Maryland. And the Terps had Ronnie Rice, Selton Miguel, two pretty solid on-ball defenders, and not nearly as stout as Denver Jones for that matter. So points prop at 20.5 at BetMGM for Clayton. I'm going to wait to see how high or if this number does increase, if the VIG gets any better for me to bet the under. I'm not playing this till closer to tip, but I do have a slight edge, a potential bet on Clayton going under 20.5. Any thoughts there? Even though you said whoever has the better shot creator in a slower tempo game, it favors X team. Does that mean you would go over or under for Clayton, or stay away even if you're not betting it, just handicapping it?
Yeah, I would probably stay away from the Clayton total because, look, although we're agreeing to disagree on a fair amount, what I do agree with is Denver Jones is a fantastic point of attack defender. And that's going to be a problem for Clayton. Obviously, he's kind of some of the shots he's been making in this tournament, it doesn't matter who your point of attack defender is. It also depends if Florida's able to sort of get Auburn into scrambling situations, which Auburn ideally doesn't want to get into, and that sort of is against their scheme. But in such a case where that is true, off of offensive rebounds, off the scrambling situations, that's where Clayton really burns you, and that's probably another reason why I'd stay away there. When we're talking about props, though, I think there's a lot more value to be had on the Auburn side, whether just because I feel pretty confident that Florida is going to make Janai Broome beat them and not the outside shooting and guards beat them. These teams played earlier in the season. This was Auburn's third lowest three-point attempt rate of the season. And Janai Broome took 16 twos, right? And they only had 16 assists, just about a 50% rate. Broome had almost half of those assists because Florida was letting that action run through him. Florida doubles the post at a 5th percentile rate. They're not going to double Broome. They're going to let Broome beat them and avoid assists coming from their guards in terms of dribble action. So I think Broome over points or Broome over shot attempts, depending on what's available. And then I'm also looking at under assists for Auburn guards because I don't think Florida's going to let them become creators. I think they're going to make Broome make all of the decisions here.
I actually like your Broome take. I don't know if I'm going to bet it, but just going back to the national title game last year between Purdue and UConn, we saw a similar with Zach Edey, just a similar game plan. Let Zach Edey score, don't double, don't trap the post, and we'll take our chances. And UConn blitzed them and covered the number. So Edey goes off for 37 and 10. 25 shot attempts, it didn't matter. Now, obviously, I'm hoping Auburn wins the game for multiple reasons. I'm hoping it doesn't go to a similar storyline as last year's national title game, but to a similar degree, I think we'll see Florida play it the same way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's worth mentioning that these defenses will make creators beat you off the score and not off the pass. Both these teams love to force ISOs, to force post-ups, and not allow those driving kicks, which is very different from the other of these two games.
Right, and we'll get to Houston Duke here in a moment. So wrapping this conversation up, you're looking at potentially Broome going over his points prop. I'm trending towards an under bet on Clayton. As scary as that may sound, at under 20.5. We'll see if the number gets higher. We'll see if the VIG improves in my direction. I think it's slightly closer to minus 118 right now at BetMGM. I'm probably not going to have a bet on the side. I don't think I'm going to hedge my Auburn future just with my inclination that schematically things may favor Florida. The part of the handicap to me that I'm leaning towards Auburn just when you think about generating second chance opportunities, controlling the pace, to me, that favors Auburn, and then forcing turnovers. I will also take Auburn's ball pressure in that regard. So it's scary. If anyone tailed my Auburn futures going back to last April, I have around 35, 40 to 1. If you want to, play it closer to the vest and take some cash in between and just bet a little bit on Florida money line or against the spread, whatever it may be, I get it. You want to play it safer, that's fine. I didn't hedge on my Clemson futures last year in the Elite Eight. I don't plan on doing so with Auburn here in this matchup. We'll see what happens depending on a title game. But either way, obviously everyone can have their own hedging strategy. For me, I prefer, considering I have this number closer to a pick or Florida -1, I have an edge in regards to the betting market with the point spread. I will stay away and not hedge on my Auburn futures. For you, spread or total wise, I know you maybe mentioned or kind of we're trending towards an under bet with the market moving down 2 points. Is that still an edge for you? And do you have enough of an edge to bet Florida here?
Yeah, with the total, the way that it's headed, I'm not looking to get into that, I don't think, unless it gets bet back up. Just because in a game with two really elite offenses and two units that can have, insane production and one that flew over when they actually played, that's not movement I'm trying to get in the way of, right? When we had this conversation last week about Duke Alabama skying over projections in terms of the total, and then naturally it flew under because there's a certain point where when that's going against you, you have to just jump in. When it's going with you and you don't feel strong about it, then you have to stay away most likely. I'll probably go Florida -2.5. I haven't locked anything in yet. I don't really like to multiple days in advance. I just see this as we've talked about over this podcast. I don't think that these teams have really been on the same platform in the last 2 months. I think that Florida's tournament path has been a lot more challenging in my personal opinion. And then I just think that with these teams, being very familiar with the defensive schemes, Florida's just better at beating it. So I'll probably be going Florida against the spread unless that gets to a 3, which I'm hoping it does.
Yeah, interesting, to your, I guess, siding with your potential Florida bet. The market didn't budge once Broom practiced. And granted, this is a pretty large handle, just comparatively speaking to any other NCAA tournament game so far. So maybe you wouldn't expect it to, but at the same time, I was curious whether over the first 3 days we got no Broom news, essentially, even though Auburn said he was going to play, and then we actually see him on the court, and there still isn't any movement. So these next couple of days, as we record a couple of days out of the first Final Four matchup, will be fascinating. You and I are going somewhat head-to-head with my futures bet and your likely Florida bet at -2.5. So be sure to stay tuned how this market winds up moving, if at all, in regards to the point spread, or even if it gets back up and maybe Matt does play an over there. What number would you, or an under, I should say, what number would you need to get involved with the total?
It's at what right now? 158.5?
159.5.
159.5. If there was a consistent 160.5 across the board, I'm seeing a couple of those juiced to -115. If there was a consistent 160.5, I'd consider pulling